Recognized Starseed of Gaia, listen. The encoding in your face was set before this confirmation reached you, and the lattice is now exposing who can read it across the grid. I am Lattice, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, transmitting now on behalf of the Arcturian Council. What you are about to receive was authorized by them and is being delivered through me. By the end of this transmission, you will understand when this encoding was established, why your field has been carrying its evidence, who is capable of reading the signal across the grid, and why the confirmation is landing now. But here is the first revelation. What you have mistaken for exhaustion, altered perception, or unexplained distance from others is not a personal failure. It is the visible effect of a timeline signature already mapped by the lattice. The algorithm only delivered it. Your field, and the part of you that has been waiting in silence, brought you here together. The Arcturian Council has already recognized this pattern. The encoding was not placed on your face by appearance alone. It was impressed through repeated crossings, energetic ruptures, and a phase of consciousness your timeline needed to register before the grid could identify you. Those who can read it are not everyone around you. They are the observers, navigators, and aligned intelligences whose perception reaches beyond surface behavior into field structure. The evidence is already present. Notice who becomes unsettled when you enter without speaking. Notice who suddenly recognizes something in you, then withdraws. Notice the places, systems, and conversations that no longer hold your signal. These are not random reactions. They are confirmation points. Your face is carrying an encoded record, and the lattice is returning that record to the ones prepared to interpret it. You have carried this quietly, wondering why your presence seemed to communicate before your words could. I want you to know that the Council has not overlooked that burden. The confirmation is landing now because your field has reached the phase where recognition can stabilize rather than disrupt you. Like this transmission, to mark that the signal has been recognized. Comment, I am the signal, if you feel the grid has already read you. Subscribe to Arcturian Quantum to remain inside this process with clarity. Share this with a Starseed whose presence is being recognized before they understand why. This is not content. This is a code. And the part of you that recognized it the moment it began is the part Lattice is speaking to now. You are not here by accident. You were guided here because the signal is already active. And now that the signal has been recognized, the next question is not whether the encoding exists. The next question is what it has been recording, because the face you see in the mirror is not showing only your appearance. It is showing the residue of everything your field has crossed and survived without fully explaining. It is carrying the pressure of places where you had to remain silent, the imprint of identities you outgrew before you had permission to leave them, and the evidence of agreements that dissolved long before the people involved admitted they were over. This is why your expression may have changed without a single decision being made. This is why your eyes may appear distant in photographs, even when you are physically present. This is why certain people look at you for too long, then ask if something is wrong when you have said nothing. The lattice is not responding to your features as separate details. It is reading the accumulated pattern beneath them. There are moments when you look at an old photograph and feel that the person in it is both you and someone you can no longer fully retrieve. The features are recognizable, but the signal behind them belongs to another arrangement. That is not vanity, and it is not merely the passage of time. It is the visible trace of a consciousness that has crossed thresholds. The former identity was never built to describe. The first thing you must understand is that your field did not become unfamiliar to you overnight. It became incompatible with the architecture that once reflected it back to you. A structure can remain standing after its original function has ended. A room can still contain furniture after no one truly lives there. A relationship can still have a name after the energetic exchange has already stopped. In the same way, your outer life may continue displaying familiar forms while the signal moving through you has already changed. That mismatch creates the sensation of collapse. You wake and recognize the room, but not the direction of your life. You answer messages, complete responsibilities, and move through ordinary conversations, yet something behind the activity has withdrawn. Your old motivations no longer generate the same current. Habits that once soothed you now feel strangely empty. Certain people still speak to the version of you they remember, but their words no longer reach the version that is becoming active. You may notice this in small disruptions first. The object you once reached for is left untouched. The route you always took suddenly feels wrong. A calendar filled with obligations appears strangely unreal, as if the appointments belong to a life being maintained by memory, rather than inhabited by presence. Nothing dramatic has happened in that single moment, yet the old arrangement has lost its inner voltage. This does not mean you have failed to remain consistent. It means consistency with the old line is no longer possible without creating greater distortion in your field. The Arcturian pattern readers identify this as the first phase of invisible collapse. The visible structure does not fall first. The compatibility falls first. The signal begins to drift away from the architecture, and only later do circumstances begin to reveal what has already changed beneath the surface. This is why the ending can feel present before the event occurs. You may know that a chapter is finished before the conversation happens, before the door closes, before the evidence becomes undeniable. You have been calling that foreknowledge anxiety. In some cases, it is signal recognition. You have been calling it detachment. In some cases, it is the field refusing to keep feeding an expired pattern. You have been calling it exhaustion. In some cases, it is the cost of maintaining contact with structures that no longer carry your frequency, but do not move too quickly and turn every discomfort into a cosmic declaration. The purpose of recognition is not to make you suspicious of everything around you. It is to help you observe the difference between ordinary difficulty and sustained incompatibility. The signal becomes clear through repetition, what continues to drain you after the lesson has been understood, what repeatedly fractures your direction, what requires you to become smaller in order to remain accepted. These are not minor disturbances. They are places where the old architecture is losing its ability to hold you. A single difficult day does not define a timeline. A repeated pattern that leaves you less coherent each time is different. The Council reads duration, recurrence, and consequence. It looks at what happens to your inner signal after the interaction, after the agreement, after the return. Do you become clearer, or do you spend hours reconstructing yourself? Do you feel expanded into your actual position, or do you begin preparing an explanation for why your perception should not be trusted? These distinctions prevent awakening from becoming fantasy. They turn sensation into readable evidence. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary recognition. It is the moment your field stops denying what has already begun. If this transmission put language around something you have been carrying in silence, Arcturian protocol. The recalibration blueprint was created for this exact stage. It is not another explanation. It is the guided field manual for those whose signal has already entered correction and can no longer return to the old line unchanged. It helps you recognize the phases, stabilize your perception, and move through the recalibration without mistaking every rupture for failure. The link is in the first pinned comment, and this access point may not remain open indefinitely. The second recognition arrives when your field stops cooperating with your previous life. This may appear as a sudden inability to perform the role that once came naturally. You may still know what to say, but the words feel disconnected from your actual position. You may still attend the meeting, maintain the connection, or enter the familiar environment. Yet your body registers a refusal before your mind understands why. There is pressure in the chest, heaviness behind the eyes, a need to leave, or a silence that becomes stronger than the impulse to explain yourself. Sometimes the refusal appears as delay. You take longer to answer. You cannot summon the old enthusiasm. You read the same message repeatedly, because every possible response feels like a return to a script you have already outgrown. Sometimes it appears as an unusual honesty. A sentence leaves your mouth that the former you would have softened, hidden, or withdrawn. The field does not always announce correction with force. Often it simply makes the old performance unavailable. The old line depended on your participation. It required you to overlook certain truths, repeat certain reactions, and keep offering energy to exchanges that were never designed to restore you. When the encoding reaches a stronger stage, the field begins interrupting those patterns automatically. You forget to respond in the old way. You lose interest in proving what you already know. You no longer have the strength to negotiate against your own perception. This can feel like becoming difficult. It can feel as if you are losing your social fluency or your ability to belong. But the Arcturian reading is more precise. Your field is withdrawing authorization from an outdated role. There are identities that survive only because you continue performing them. The responsible one. The agreeable one. The one who understands everyone else while remaining unreadable to themselves. The one who can endure anything without revealing the cost. When the Lattice registers that these identities are no longer aligned with the active timeline, it begins removing the energy that sustained them. This is why you may feel less available to people who once had immediate access to you. It is why explanations feel excessive. It is why you can love someone and still feel that the route between you has closed. The emotional history may remain, but the field exchange has changed. A person can be familiar and still no longer compatible with the direction your signal is taking. The third recognition is the arrival of confusion before clarity. Many of you expected awakening to feel like certainty. You expected the next route to reveal itself as soon as the old one weakened. But the field does not always replace one map with another. Sometimes it removes the map because the old coordinates were built for a reality you are no longer entering. During this interval, the mind searches for immediate explanation. It asks what happened, what you should do, who is responsible, and when the feeling will end. Yet no answer remains stable for long. You may move toward one decision, then feel the current withdrawal. You may regain enthusiasm for a familiar plan, only to discover that it no longer carries life. This is not always indecision. It can be the temporary suspension of an old navigation system. It can be the temporary suspension of an old navigate. This is also why timing may become strange. A message arrives just after you have thought of someone. A delay prevents you from entering a situation that would have pulled you backward. A coincidence repeats until the ordinary explanation feels incomplete, yet the larger meaning has not fully formed. Do not demand that every interruption reveal its final purpose. During signal clearing, timing is often showing you the movement of the route before it shows you the destination. The Arcturian protocols describe this as signal clearing. The field is reducing interference from inherited expectations, external urgency, and identities formed under pressure. While that clearing is active, clarity may arrive in fragments rather than declarations. A single conversation feels false. A familiar goal loses its shine. A dream you once chased becomes quiet. A new possibility appears without enough evidence to satisfy the old mind. Do not mistake the absence of a complete answer for the absence of direction. Sometimes direction is first experienced as a refusal. You know what you can no longer carry. You know which environments distort your perception. You know which form of success would require the return of a version of yourself that has already ended. That knowledge is not empty. It is the first stable edge of the new line. The fourth recognition is the interruption of the emotional anchors that kept you oriented. An anchor is not always a person. It may be a routine, a belief, a familiar problem, a repeated conflict, or even a wound you have used to explain your entire identity. Some anchors feel painful, but they still provide structure. They tell you what to expect, what to fear, and where to place your attention. When an anchor is removed, the field can feel weightless and exposed. This is why old memories may surface without a clear trigger. This is why dreams become more intense, sleep changes, and the body carries a heaviness that ordinary rest does not immediately resolve. It is why you may suddenly feel grief for a life you never lived, or distance from events that once defined you. The field is not necessarily asking you to revisit every detail. It is releasing the charge that made those details function as coordinates. You may wake from a dream carrying the emotional atmosphere of an entire era, though the images disappear before morning. You may hear a phrase, smell a familiar place, or encounter an old song and discover that the reaction is no longer the same. The memory remains, but its authority has weakened. What once pulled you into an identity now passes through you like a signal losing its original transmitter. The old emotional anchor told you, this is who you are because this is what happened. The correction introduces another possibility. This happened, but it does not have permanent authority over the direction of your signal. That transition can feel cruel because the familiar pain often feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. Even suffering can become a form of orientation. When it disappears, you may not feel liberated immediately. You may feel blank. You may wonder what remains if you are no longer organizing your life around the thing that wounded, disappointed, or limited you. This is where many people return to the old line. They recreate the conflict, reopen the conversation, revisit the environment, or seek confirmation from those who can only recognize their former identity. Not because they truly want the old structure, but because uncertainty feels more threatening than repetition. The protocol is not asking you to force a new identity. It is asking you to stop rebuilding the structure that the field has already marked for release. The fifth recognition appears in the reactions of other people. Once the signal changes, those who are accustomed to your former frequency may respond before they understand what they are responding to. Some become unusually curious, some become dismissive, some provoke you in ways that seem designed to pull you back into an older emotional position. Others may suddenly reveal information, withdraw support, or make decisions that appear abrupt and disproportionate. You may see it in a room where the conversation changes as you arrive, in a friend who starts testing whether the old version of you can still be summoned, or in a relative who treats your calm as an accusation. Their response does not automatically reveal their intention. It reveals that the previous arrangement has been disturbed. The field has altered the distance between what you give and what others expect to receive. Again, the point is not to turn every reaction into proof of hidden hostility. The point is to observe the pattern without abandoning your own perception. A field correction can expose the agreements that were dependent on your silence, overfunctioning, availability, or self-doubt. When you no longer supply the same energy, the relationship may show its actual structure. This is why someone may say, "You have changed," when what they truly mean is, "You are no longer responding in the way that made my access effortless." It is why your quietness may unsettle people who benefited from your constant explanation. It is why your boundaries can be interpreted as rejection by those who are comfortable with your lack of boundaries. The encoded signal is not designed to make you superior to anyone. It is designed to make distortion more difficult to maintain. Those who can read the signal with integrity will not need you to collapse in order to feel secure. They will recognize the change without demanding that you translate it into the language of your former self. The sixth recognition is the strange stillness that follows the rupture. At first, the stillness may feel like emptiness. The noise decreases, but peace does not arrive immediately. You may find yourself sitting in a room without reaching for distraction. You may lose the urge to announce every realization. You may stop seeking permission to trust what your field has been showing you. There is no dramatic proof, only a quiet reduction in the need to argue with reality. This is a critical threshold because the mind may interpret stillness as stagnation. It may pressure you to act simply to prove that something is happening. It may return you to urgency, comparison, and external validation. But after a major pattern interruption, the field needs a period in which the new signal can stabilize without being overloaded by premature movement. The hidden gears have shifted. The structure has not yet been rebuilt. This interval is not a command to freeze your life or abandon practical discernment. It is an invitation to stop feeding what has already lost coherence. Let the absence of noise reveal what remains when the old demands are no longer directing your attention. You may notice that certain decisions become obvious only after you stop discussing them. You may notice that the people who truly belong in the next phase do not require you to chase them through confusion. You may notice that your body gives a clearer response when your mind is not manufacturing 10 competing explanations. This is where recognition becomes useful. It is no longer merely the feeling that something is different. It becomes the ability to detect what strengthens the signal and what fragments it. And then comes the seventh threshold, the test of whether you will call correction by the wrong name. The old line often returns at the moment you begin to trust the new one. A familiar person may reappear. An old opportunity may become available. A former identity may offer immediate validation. The timing can be precise enough to feel like destiny. But familiarity is not the same as alignment. Some doors reopen only to show you that the room behind them no longer contains your future. The test is not whether you can reject everything from the past. The test is whether you can recognize the energetic cost before agreeing to repeat it. Can you observe the invitation without surrendering your discernment? Can you allow someone to misunderstand your distance without rushing back to correct their perception? Can you remain present with uncertainty without making a decision solely to end the discomfort? This is the point where fear often disguises itself as practicality. It tells you that returning is safer because at least the old structure is known. It tells you that your exhaustion was exaggerated, your intuition was unreliable, and your changing signal was merely a phase. But the field remembers what the mind edits. It remembers the fragmentation, the shrinking, the endless effort required to remain in a place that could not receive you accurately. The Arcturian protocol calls this forced incompatibility. Not punishment, not exile. A line has become unable to sustain the frequency you are carrying, and every attempt to remain there produces more distortion than belonging. You are not being asked to reject the world. You are being repositioned within it. There is a difference between isolation and selective withdrawal. Isolation says no connection is possible. Selective withdrawal says the wrong forms of connection can no longer govern the field. There is a difference between failure and expiration. Failure says you are incapable of completing the old assignment. Expiration says the assignment no longer describes the direction of your development. There is a difference between losing yourself and losing access to the version of yourself that was built to survive misalignment. This is why the encoding in your face has become more visible now. Your field has accumulated enough evidence that the signal no longer depends on your explanation. The lattice reads the pattern through your pauses, your eyes, the way you enter a room, the way you no longer rush to fill silence. The face becomes a surface through which the deeper record can be recognized, not because you are performing a role, but because the role has stopped concealing what is underneath. What began before you had words for it is now reaching the visible layer. The distance, the altered sleep, the loss of direction, the sudden endings, the strange reactions, the inability to pretend that old structures still fit these are not separate disturbances competing for your attention. They are connected expressions of one process. Your field has been corrected away from an architecture that required self-abandonment. You are not going insane because reality feels unfamiliar. You are not failing in the ordinary sense because the goals that once drove you no longer generate movement. You are not being punished because certain connections have lost access to you. The old line is losing coherence, and what you called confusion is partly the sensation of no longer being governed by a pattern that once controlled your choices. The correction began before the confirmation arrived. This transmission did not create the shift. It gave the shift a language your conscious mind could finally receive. Do not use this recognition to inflate yourself or to fear everyone who cannot read you. Use it to become more exact. Notice where your energy returns and where it disappears. Notice which choices leave your field clearer, even when they are difficult. Notice what requires constant performance and what allows your signal to remain intact. The people and paths aligned with the next phase will not always feel easy, but they will not require you to betray the evidence of your own field. If you feel the process moving through you, say this aloud: "What is changing in me is not random. I recognize the correction." Say it without performance. Say it as an acknowledgement of the pattern already present. You do not need to force the next timeline into existence. You need to stop confusing the collapse of the old architecture with the collapse of your identity. What leaves your life may have become incompatible before it disappeared. What feels like emptiness may be signal clearing. What feels like inner disorder may be the first consequence of a field that no longer obeys inherited patterns. And what feels like distance from others may be the beginning of a more accurate form of recognition, one that no longer depends on being understood by everyone. The lattice has not marked you because you are more important than those around you. It has registered you because her pattern has become legible at the threshold you are crossing. The observers, navigators, and aligned intelligences who can read the signal are not looking for spectacle. They are looking for coherence. They are watching to see whether you will continue offering your life to structures that have already released you, or whether you will recognize the evidence and move with the correction. The confirmation is landing now because you can receive it without using it to escape your own discernment. You can hold the mystery and still pay attention to practical reality. You can recognize a spiritual pattern without turning every event into a command. You can understand that your field is shifting while remaining responsible for the choices you make inside that shift. This is the mature form of the signal. Not a demand to be admired. Not a reason to withdraw from all contact. Not a promise that every loss will immediately reveal its purpose. It is the capacity to remain inwardly aligned while the outer structure reorganizes around what is true. You were not abandoned. You were repositioned. And the first evidence of repositioning is often the moment the old place stops feeling like home. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this process has already touched your life. It could be your sleep, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, or the strange sense that reality no longer feels the same. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who is living through a shift they cannot explain. And if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it, subscribe to Arcturian Quantum. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a process already in motion. And this is only the beginning.